Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. Um, so today we are going to talk about cloud security and IAM policy. It is going to be an introduction to, if you want to get into cloud security, or what are the things which you need to understand in terms of cloud security. So it'll be more of an introduction. We'll have a series of webinar going forward on this topic itself. Just a quick overview before we start off. We have a Q&A option. If you have joined via Zoom, you can click on the Q&A and you can go ahead and ask your questions. We'll try to answer your questions live, or we'll be sending you the answers via the chat. If you have any questions, and there will be few interactive slides also in between, so prepare to get your devices out and scan QR codes to send in your answers so that we can understand what is the majority in terms of understanding how cloud security is, right? So without further ado, let me introduce myself. Um, uh, let's go to the next slide. So I am Subho Halder, co-founder and CISO at Appknox. So basically, at Appknox, we are one of the most powerful plug-and-play security platform which enables developers, security researchers, as well as enterprises to build safe and secure mobile ecosystem using a system plus human approach. And we will be talking about cloud because most of this application actually connects back to cloud, and how do we assess a few of those cloud resources. So we'll be discussing more about it. A little bit more about myself. I've been giving talks and workshops and training related to mobile security in different conferences such as Black Hat, OAS, RSA, and other security conferences. Along with me, have Vaishali. She's a penetration tester and a security researcher at Appknox. She has worked with web application, APIs, Android and iOS pen testing, as well as assessment. She has been instrumental in doing some research in cloud security domain, and what we thought was over the webinar to impart few of the knowledge which we have gained while we were experimenting on cloud security. So, yeah.
Thank you, Shubho, for such a great introduction. Hello, everyone.
Hi, Vishali.
Hi.
All right. Let's go to the next slide. So today what we're going to talk about is this kind of an agenda which I wanted to showcase. We'll be talking about what is cloud computing. So even before you understand what is cloud security, we need to understand what is cloud computing. How is it different than a traditional data center? Why cloud security is important, right? And obviously there's something called CIS Benchmark. So we'll be talking about what exactly is CIS Benchmark. And of course, as a security researcher yourself, what should you do in terms of cloud assessment, and what you should be asking from client, or what as a client you should be giving to a security assessor, what kind of credentials or what are the things which you need to provide so that your assessor, or if you are a security researcher, you can assess the cloud security posture in an effective way. And obviously, we will be touching on the IAM policy configuration level reviews in this webinar. So let's talk about traditional data centers, right? Traditional data centers, if you look in the right side of the picture, it's kind of a traditional data center, right? In a traditional data center, there exists something called servers, and applications are actually stored inside these servers. It's very difficult to scale up or scale down, because now if you need to scale up, you need to add more servers. There's hardware requirements, there's a lot of upfront cost which is required, space is required, and things like that. It's also restricted to a physical region, and obviously it is always tightly coupled with everything else, right? And that's how mostly a traditional data center work. Now, if I ask you about how cloud works, right? The cloud computing works in a very different realm. There is no concept called servers over here, right? Rather, it's called resources. or services, right? And these resources are not constrained to one location, which means that you can have one of the application running in one region, the other application services is running in another region. Just to give you an example, let's say a virtual machine is running in India region, and let's say your database is hosted in Germany region, right? And all of this can be hosted or located in different region, and but still all of this will work together as a single entity or a single unit, according to your logic, right? And it can be easily scaled up or resized on demand, so you do not need to pay for hardware upgrades to scale your application up, and you only pay for the resources which you use. So now what I will quickly ask whoever has joined, a small poll. So what I'll do is I'll start the poll, and you can take out your mobile, and you can scan the QR code which you will see in the screen in a minute. Just give me a minute. And so now that you understand what's the difference between a traditional cloud, traditional data center and a cloud, I would want to ask you this question regarding what are the advantages you feel cloud computing brings into the table, right? So if you have a phone, you can actually scan the QR code, or you can go to slido.com with the participant code 007007, and you can type in, what do you think are the advantages of using cloud? I'll just give like 30 seconds probably. Scalability, of course. Pay as you use, sure. Anything else? Better collaboration, of course. Hardware cost. Someone wrote 007. Agile, yes, of course. Backup and restore data, yes, absolutely. So these are, as you can see, right from the beginning, these are some of the really big advantages of using cloud, right? Better DevOps, infrastructure as code, platform as a service, and all of this came up when the cloud technologies actually took off, right? But as you can see, most of the people understood that cloud actually means scale. There is infinite scalability possible. Data loss prevention, okay. All right. All right. So I'll just close out this poll for now. Thank you so much for participating in the poll. So now now that we understand the advantages of cloud, right? So let's try to understand what is the attack surface around cloud and traditional data center, right? For a security approach for a traditional data center, it is pretty, it's not that complex, because since these data centers are restricted, so a traditional perimeter security works the best, right? Because there's a network boundary across a data center, and you can use things like VPNs, IPS, IDS, proxies, and firewalls to make sure that the traffic coming inside the data center and the traffic exiting the data center are secured, monitored, and things are under control, right? Gateways and firewalls are used to make sure the network traffic is protected, and that's how the traditional security model for data centers work. Now, if I talk about cloud, right, it's completely different, because the cloud security is not, not the cloud security per se, but the cloud computing itself is not restricted to servers, or it doesn't have a network boundary per se. As I just mentioned, few of these resources can run in different regions, different locations, few different services can run. So these are not restricted to certain servers or doesn't have a network boundary. It is more fluid. Now, each resources can access each other and can be also exposed publicly online in the internet. For example, that your storage itself can be exposed directly to public. It can be also exposed to different resources internally altogether, right? And hence, traditional perimeter security is not enough, or sometimes doesn't even apply to cloud. And that's one of the reasons why cloud security is very much different than how traditional data center security is, right? Let's go to the next slide. So what approach does cloud computing takes for securing? Now that we understand, right, traditional security is traditional data center employs traditional kind of security or perimeter-based security or network boundary-based security, which is far more easier to apply. But in terms of cloud, it's not the same. So what approach does cloud computing takes for security? So here comes the definition of something called IAM, right? If you go to the next slide, I can explain you why. Because these public cloud providers, now they understand that not all the resources which they are providing to the client can be protected using these traditional ways. So these public cloud companies came up with something called Identity Access Management, or IAM, by which you can provide permission to each of these resources, and you can provide access and permission to all of these resources to understand when or how these resources are exposed to each other and also to public internet, right? Over here, you can see we will be talking about AWS specifically in this webinar. And over here, you can see there are a few AWS services which I've listed it down. On the left-hand side, you will see AWS Beanstalk, Elastic Compute, or the Kubernetes service, and or the AWS Lambda. These services still could have used traditional security measures like VPNs or proxies. You can add VPC networking layer on top of that to prevent any other data leakages happening across this specific resources. But if you look on the right-hand side, the resources related to RDS, CloudFront, Route 53, or even S3, on these resources, you cannot actually apply VPN or any other network perimeter-based security. And sometimes these right-hand side resources needs access on the left-hand side resources. And all of this are controlled via something called IAM. In this case, this is Identity Access Management. And how do we give this access to these services, right? We use something called policy, right? If you go to the next slide, what is this IAM policy? A policy is nothing but an object. It's very similar in different other clouds. So a policy is an object in AWS. When associated with a resource or an identity, defines its permission, right? And AWS evaluates these policies when an IAM principal is accessed. Permissions in these policies determines if the request to access is allowed or denied, right? So on the right-hand side, you can see a sample IAM policy. Please do not use this policy as a production policy because this is very vulnerable policy. I'll just go through this policy very fast, quickly. The first thing which you see is version. So this is the latest version 2 of IAM policy in AWS. There is an older version, which is 2018 version, which also exists. In the latest version, version is the key which is required, followed by statement, which is a key which is again a required. Inside the statement JSON object, you need to define what exactly is the role or the action you want to allow this permission on, right? So SID is something which is optional, which is unique for each policy. It's optional for now, it's Visual Editor 0. Effect basically means what is the effect you want to add to this policy? Is it allowed, denying? And the action is in which resources you want to add this actions, or these are the permissions which is there. So as you can see, I have put in two actions, S3 : get star and S3 : put star, which means any permission related to S3 : get bucket, get object, all of these actions will be selected automatically. Mind you, over here, star is a wildcard character, and it basically means anything starting with S3 : get. So I can also have an action called S3 : star that will basically be an S3 admin kind of an action. And apply this permission to which resource. In this case, I've written star. This is a very vulnerable IAM policy, but I hope you understood how an IAM policy kind of looks like. Right? Now that we understand this IAM policy, and now that we understand all of this, the cloud computing and the traditional computing, how traditional data center, how they are different, let's talk about basics about AWS, right? So I have with me Vaishali, who will be taking you guys on a journey on that. Vaishali, on to you.
Sure, thank you. So there are a number of cloud platforms available like AWS, Azure, Google Cloud. So all the cloud platform has a similar configuration. The only difference is the way of implementing. So as we have choose AWS because the majority of the people is using AWS. So we thought to just talk about AWS. So in this basics of AWS, I'm going to take you through the AWS portal, like how it will look, how you can log in, and how AWS CLI works. So let's see. Okay, so this is how AWS portal will looks like. Just you can create your account and you can sign in. As I've already created my account, so I'm going to sign in. So in the AWS, there are two kinds of user. One is root user and another one is an IAM user. So root user is the user which has the highest privilege. The root user has access to all the resources that root user can create. The another users can access, delete the resource and everything. The first account which we created is considered as a root user. Now in the root user, you can also add another user, like a number of users you can add in your cloud account, and that is called as IAM user, which means you can create a user and you can define certain permissions, certain roles, and you can assign that user. So I'm going to log in with the root user. So let's log in. So after logging into the application, the portal will look like this. So as there are a number of services available in the Google Cloud, so simply you can go here in the search button, you can search for like S3 or any service you want to use. So this is how you can access all the services. Simply search here and you can access those services. Now this is the profile module from this is the region one. Like, so as Subho told, there are different regions available. You can access your services from any region like India, USA, or any region you want to choose. You can choose from here and change it. So the only difference is like the cost might be vary from region to region. Might be in India, it might be cheap. In USA, it might be a bit costly. So the cost will differ from region to region. Now from here, it's account, you can simply go to security credentials. So here you can see you can create user roles and groups. So we will go in deep in identity and access management in the upcoming slide. So this is the first way to log in into the AWS. Now you can also like AWS also provide a feature to log in from CLI. So according to your OS, you have to go to official website of AWS and see how you can install AWS in your, as I am using Mac, so I have already installed, and in the Mac we use AWS configure to access the account. So just give me 1 minute. Yeah, so I have already entered my access key, so I'm not going to enter again. So that's why I'm normally putting blank and entering. Same for the access key. Now enter, you can choose any region in which you want to work. So default region is US East, and default format of output is JSON. If you want, you can try another method as another format of Azure. So now I want to check that if it is configured properly or not. So simply I'm going to use this one command to list all the users present in my AWS account. So here you can see I have run this AWS IAM get users command and it will listed all the user, which means like I have successfully configured. Now from CLI as well, I can access the AWS account. So let's move to so this is how you can access AWS. This is how the portal will look like. So let's move to the CIS benchmark. So each cloud provider like AWS, Azure, has their own CIS benchmark. So basically CIS benchmark is a set of best practices in order to secure, in order to protect your organization, in order to access and secure your organization if you are using the cloud environment. So the AWS team is creating one list of best practices which you should follow if you are using those services. And let's see how it will look like. So simply, so I have already, you can go to official websites of AWS and you can download the CIS benchmark, as I have already downloaded. So I'm going to show you. So here you can see this is the PDF file looks like. This is the list of all the test cases which we have to follow. Like for the IAM, it is around 24 test cases which we have to follow, logging, monitoring. So this is how CIS benchmark will look like. And in the upcoming slide, we'll see how we can implement that. Okay, so next one, let's go to the next slide. So what the client should provide for the cloud assessment. So when we go for when we are opting for a cloud assessment, one question will arise is like what credentials and what access key and security key we should provide to the client, like what kind of role we should provide to them. So for that, AWS has a feature, they has a role called security audit role. So you can create this role, simply go to security credentials and click on the users. So basically, what is this role? So this role provide an access to all the resources with read-only permission, which means you can only view, you can only access the service, you can't modify, because cloud contains in a very sensitive data. You are putting your lots of sense, or might be by mistakenly, if you delete anything, then it will be a problematic. It will be disaster if you delete anything. So you can simply create this role, just give the username, anything. So here are two types. You can give AWS programmatic access, which means to access from CLI, and the credentials. You can give custom password if you want, or you can choose auto generate password. Go to the next permission. Now go to the attach existing policy, and now search for the security. So here is the role which has access to all the resources, but with the read only, and go to next, review and create. So this is how you can create. You can ask, you can tell your client that we need this role. We need this role with the security audit role, and you can access now, then you can start your assessment. So next is how to start cloud assessment. So when you starting cloud assessment, you might be not aware of what all services the client is using, or client will tell you like we are using these services, then might be something can miss from there. And so it is our responsibility, like we should know like what all services they are using. So in the cloud, there is a feature called there is a service called tag editor. Simply you can search for tag editor, go here. So basically, what is tag editor? Tag editor help us to get all the services used by the particular account. So simply be editor, select all the reasons you can using in the environment, the cloud environment. You can select in the resource type. It's just loading. Just give me 2 minutes. So it's just wait. I'm not sure why it's taking time. Yeah. So from here, you can select all the supported resource types. So now you have selected all the reason, all the resources. Now just click on the search resources, and it will start searching for all the services. Well, it will take them some time. So just wait for it. It will take time, and then you can export to the CSV file. So just for saving the time, I'm already downloaded. So I'm going to show how we can do that, how it will look slides. So here is this file. So this is how it will file look like after downloading. So these are all the services which is my cloud account is using, like EC2, IAM, and this is the type of the service. Like in EC2, they are using DHCP options for configuring the IP, dynamic IP, internet gateway, instance profile, and this is the reason in which they are using. Like in the US is reason they are using EC2, might be there different reason in which they are using different resources, different services. So simply you can go, now you get idea, okay, in EC2 they are using. So what we will do, we just simply come here, we'll search for EC2 and start assessing that service. We start for looking for like, have they configured properly all the resources in a proper way or not? So this is how you can start your cloud assessment. So let's move to the next slide. Okay. Attack vectors in cloud. So when we talk about configuration level review in the cloud assessment, so one of the important thing which we need is like until unless you will not log in into the cloud environment, you can't check all the configurations and all. So for checking all of these, you need access key. So there are some different ways, some attack vectors through which you can get access key, secret key, their credentials. So one of the popular method through which I have found a number of times is in hard-coded way, like in the source code, the secret key is hard coded. Like you can, for example, in the mobile application, in the Android application, you can decompile the application and start looking for the hard coded secret key. And most of the time it will find in the string.xml file. So simply you can go and look for that. Is there any like secret key or access token is there, or either credentials is there or not. Another way, you can look in the JS file. Sometimes like in the web application, the mobile application, you can analyze all the JS file and see somehow by mistakenly have they put it the secret key or credentials of their cloud environment there or not. Also, you can do some recon, like in the GitHub repo. Sometimes what happens when developers are developing by mistakenly, they have keep their GitHub repo publicly available, and also they put it their credentials by mistakenly. So you can go to their GitHub repo and look for it if there is their secret key or access token is there or not. So these all are way, and there might be many more ways through which you can you can get the secret key and access token in the environment. So let's move to the IAM policy configuration level review. So as already Shubha has talked about IAM policy, and IAM policy is very important to secure. So let me tell you why it is very important, because IAM policy, in simple words, if I would say, IS policy is like creating a number of users in your cloud account and assigning them roles and policy. So let's suppose a single user get compromised, a single user access key get leakage, then it's going to be compromise your entire account. So one of the very important policy which needs to be configured properly is IAM policy, because if one account get compromised and attacker somehow, if you have not configured roles and policy properly, then it's going to be disaster for that account, because everything attacker can access. There are hundreds of users might be in your cloud environment. So configure an IAM policy in a good way is very important. So we'll see what are all the best practices which we can follow in order to keep them secure. So let's start with the first and second. Avoid the use of root account and ensure no root account access key exists. So what does it mean? So as I told you in the starting, like root account has the highest privilege, right? So just give me 1 minute. Yeah, go to security credentials. Yeah, so root account has the highest privilege, which means that root user has access to everything. So if we keep using the root account, then chances of getting the exposure of credentials of root account is higher. So it is always recommended that do not use root account on frequently basis. Instead of that, create a role, create another user and give that roles and permission which you need on the daily basis, and do not use the root account. So simply go to security credentials from here, like credentials report. You can go, you can download this report. I have already downloaded, so I'm going to show from there how we can read the data from there. Just give me 1 minute. Okay. So here so when we download that file, it will look like this. So these all are the root account. These all are the users which I'm using in my account. So what they say, root account should use minimum, but if you can see the password last used, used on 12 December. So I'm frequently using IAM policy. So you have to go here and we'll check for it that the client is using the root account frequently. If they are using, you have to recommend that do not use root account on frequently basis. Now next one, it was saying ensure no root account access key exists. So here you can see like access key last used. From here you can see that access key I have used, which means access key is already enabled. So why it is saying that access key we should not enable for the root account? As root account has a highest privilege, so chances of getting exposed of secret key and access key is higher as compared to username and password. So that is why it is recommended that keep the access key and private, do not use access key and secret key, and instead use the credentials for the root user account. So let's move to the next part, like ensure MFA is enabled, like for the root account for all the user. So when we talk about MFA, what does it mean? MFA means multi-factor authentication, which means apart from normal username and credential, username and password, you should also add one extra layer of security. It is not just for the cloud platform, it is for all the applications in day-to-day life. For any application you are developing or building, you always use MFA for your applications, so that suppose your credentials get compromised, then there's a chances that might be the attacker will not get a MFA code because it is at your end. So it is a good practice to always enable MFA for all the users, not just root, all the users. So you can see here this MFA active is false, which means I have not enabled MFA all the users. Next one is ensure security questions are registered in the AWS account and the credentials are not used. So how we can see like why it is very important. So ensuring the security questions are registered. So what happened, like sometimes we forgot our username and password in your account. So if we have registered the security questions, then to recover the account is bit easy. So that is why it is recommended that it's a good practice to use your to set up the security question. So here you can see, simply go to the account and you can see from here configure security challenge question and just click on edit, and from here you can configure. So when, if suppose by mistakenly if you forget your account, it's an easy way to recover, because AWS, your account contains lots of sensitive data. So forgetting, like if you miss the password, then it will be difficult for you. So next one is ensure credentials unused for 90 days or greater are disabled. So sometimes what happened in your organization, in our organization, we created the user account, but we do not use on the frequently basis. Sometimes we just created, or some employee will join and later when it leaves, so we just forgot to delete that account. So it isn't a good practice. If some account is not getting used, just remove that account or disable that account. So here you can see like support user. I haven't used this account from a long time. So I should delete this account, and I do not allow that. If I'm not using this account, then I should not keep it here. I should delete this account. Next is like ensure that credentials unused thing. Ensure access key are rotated every 90 days. So it all for password as well. Sometimes we recommend like change your password, it's 90 days. So same for the access key, you should also keep changing your access key after 19 days. Okay. So ensure strong password policy. So for the password policy, like when you are generating the password, you are customizing your password, you should follow always in a best practices. So what are the best practices? Simply go to here, like in setting, then we come here, security, and you have to follow all of these, like at least one uppercase, lowercase, numbers, special characters, password should expire and password should change after 90 days. So the chances of guessing the password, there is one attack called like guessing password, social engineering, not social engineering. There is like the attacker will not guess the password. If you keep the simple password like welcome@123 or 123, any simple password, then the chances of getting your password get compromised. So you always go to here and click on all these policies. So whenever someone is creating the password, they have to follow all these requests like uppercase, lowercase, special characters, or etc. So this is how you can make a strong password. Next one is ensure IAM policy are attached only to groups and role. What does it mean? So any organization, there are different kind of teams, like sales team, marketing team, security team. So each team needs a different access. Might be sales team needs some access to the resources, but security team need a different access set of resources. They need different. So instead of creating the roles and assigning the role one by one to user, you should always create in a group, attach that policy to the group, and then assign the role to that user. So how you can do that? Simply go to here. Here you can go to users. So here you can see these all are the users, and these 4 users are not part of any group, but testing is part of the one group. Another user is part of the group. So these users are assigned with the policy. So now go to the group. So here I have created this group. Now simply I can go here. Now I can add the users from here. So whatever roles, whatever policy I have defined for this group, it is going to be the same for the user I'm going to add. So why it is important? Because sometimes what happens when you are creating any user, so by mistakenly we given more permission to that user. So for preventing from those scenario, it is a good practice to add the user in the group instead of assigning them individually. So from how this you can do that. Enable detailed billing. So one of the key advantage, one of the main reason that cloud is so popular, it follows the pay as you go model. What does it mean is like whatever services you are using for what time, at that time only you have to pay. Like if I want to host my website for 3 months only, and I need a space of 10 GB, then I have to pay for only 3 months, not for the entire year. Before it was like you have to buy the server and all. So it follow pay as you go model. So when you follow this, what happens, sometimes I'm using a resources like a virtual machine, and while using the virtual machine, I'm closing down, I just forgot to close the virtual machine, so it will keep charging that amount. Like still I'm not using, it is inactive, right? But still it will charge because I haven't closed that service. So for preventing from these scenario, you should go to billing module, billing preference, and from here you have to enable the receiving billing alert, so that whenever any extra services is getting used, and if it is on inactive, then it will give you an alert that okay, you are using this services, but it might be inactive and it just charging extra. Maintain the current and alternate contact details. So go here, go to account. So here, you should always put your contact details, updated latest contact detail you should put, because what happens sometimes we change our mobile number, we change our email ID, and then we forget. So at the time of forgetting the password, you might need this latest phone number so that you can get the OTP. So it is a good practice to keep the contact information and alternate contact information updated. Do not set up access key during the initial setup for all. So as I told you in the starting, like for the access key, chances of getting exposed is higher as compared to username and password. So it is a good practice when you are creating the user, instead of giving them the programmatic access, you should always give them only credentials, not the CLI access. So from when you create, just enter from here, do not select this one, AWS programmatic access, just select this one, that password one, and then create the password and then create the user. So the chances of getting compromised of access key will reduce. And ensure IAM policy that allow full access admin privileges are not created. So sometimes when we create the policy, what happen? We are giving the full privilege in that policy. So because of that, if by mistakenly, if you assign that policy to a user, that user get the full access to your account. So how you can check this? Simply go to the policy. Simply just click on any policy. So here you can see in this policy, we have defined all this action. I want this policy to be allowed. Like if this policy assigned to any user, all these action can be performed by that user. So here you can see they have defined some actions, but sometimes what happen? Let me show you. So you have to go one by one and check that what all we can access. Just give me 1 minute. Okay, not sure why it's not showing here. So there's one policy called where we can define. Okay, anyway, like in this policy, when like in the previous slide here, I'm not sure why it's not visible here right now, but yeah. So here you can see in the actions. So in the action, instead of putting like defining the role, you can directly put star, which means all the actions is allowed. Like in the resources, you can see we have put it star. So here you can see that all the resources are allowed, and the user who has access, who is attached with this policy, that can access all the resources. So make sure that all the policy, only one administrator user only have this policy like resources to star, which means he can access all the resources, all the actions they can access. So in this way, you should always define, and you check, go one by one and check if all the policies has what kind of permission they have implemented star or not on the policy. So this is how these all are the some of the policies which you can follow in order to prevent from to securing your IAM policy. Same, this is as shown from the GUI. Same, you can go for the CLI as well. Like in the CIS benchmark, they have already defined how you can, like, you can simply type few commands and from that you can analyze. So you can also follow that method as well. So yeah, these all are some. And thank you everyone. If you have any doubt, any question, feel free to ask in the comment section.
Thank you so much, Vaishali. So we have a few questions, which I was reading. So the first question which I have is, how to check if access key is present for a root account but not yet used? If the root account is never accessed, then the column of access key last used in the download security report will be empty. Correct. But how to check if access key is present for root account?
Yeah, sure. So, sorry. So user creation name, password, uneffective. Access key, one active value true. So here you can see like, okay, this MFA access key is active, which means that access key is present for the root account. So from in the credentials report, you can see.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you. The another question which I have is, what are the methodology and resource should we follow while doing black box pen testing?
So for the okay, so for the resource, like we have covered one slide of the attack vectors, right? So in through that way, we firstly our target will be like to get access key and secret key somehow. Like we have to do lots of recon, like GitHub recon, and we have to analyze source code, JS file, and then only you can start your assessment. So yeah, this is how you can start your black box. This will be black box approach for the cloud assessment. And yeah, there are many more services. Like sometimes there are services like S3 bucket. So you can look for the S3 bucket URL and see if that URL is public or not. So with respect to other resources, you can look for the services like what is public facing, like AWS bucket is public facing. Sometime in Lambda function, if you are using that, might be you can find in when you are testing the web application. So with respect to the IAM, you need to be logged in. First, you have to find the credentials and access key. Then you can check for the IAM, all the, but with other services, you can go for black box like S3 and etc.
Great. I would also suggest you to go to the CIS benchmark, and there exists few open source tools also, which will kind of help you in terms of doing the black box pen testing in terms of cloud. Also, a shout out to few blog posts which are out there in the internet. You can go through those. Specifically by Cloudy, you can go through their website, their blog. They have few blog posts there. Even we have few blog posts on cloud security. Please go through those resources. So yeah. Okay. My next question is, for misconfigured users, are there options for a quick rollback?
Okay, what does it mean, like quick rollback?
Like, for example, there is a user which got created and with the wrong policies, probably. And is there an option to do a quick rollback to the previous state? Have you seen that?
Yeah, we can simply delete that user. And like to here, you can delete that user and like to here, and there's an option to delete the user, or you can select from here as well. So you can delete that user and then again create another user. And if you want to remove this, like I have by mistakenly, I have given this policy. So I will click here and remove this policy as well.
No, please do not remove it from administrator. Just kidding. Okay, so we got it. Okay, now I have a very funny question. What if AWS gets hacked? How does IAM help?
What if AWS get hacked?
Yeah.
Then how IAM will prevent? So I have told you about the MFA. So suppose AWS get hacked, then still if that attacker will get your username and password, still he's not able to log in because the MFA code is going to be received at your end on your mobile. So that is not possible that attacker will get until unless your mobile is also got stolen. So yeah, this is how, like, then you can do this. MFA will help you in this.
Yeah, I think this is a very generic kind of a question. I
Yeah.
think any answer to this question is actually
Hmm.
correct. But what if AWS gets hacked? It's similar to what if internet goes down for the whole
Yeah.
world.
Yes.
Okay. I have another question. This is regarding a tool. Is using Scout Suite good enough
Yes.
for pen testing, especially while checking policies? We saw you have more than 1,000 policies. Then how will we check it manually?
Yes. So Stout
Interesting
tool.
question.
Yeah, nice. So I've used the Stout tool as well. So you can also use the Stout tool. It will cover almost 80%, but for few of the test cases, you need to go on GI only. And as your question is like there are 1,000 of policy. So I have told you, you can go for CLI as well. Where is my, yeah. So in the CIS benchmark from CLI, just give me 1 minute. Yeah. So you can, I'm not sorry. I'm not sure. Yeah, now it's better. You can use always CLI is a better option. Even I have created a script for automating this. So Stout will definitely is going to be automate this. So here you can see you can use this query. So let's say, let's use this one. Okay, so basically it will filter out. They have already given us commands and all, and it will filter out. So from here you can check all of these. Like if I run this command, yeah, hope it should work. Yeah, so directly it gives the output which we need to check. So here we can see root account. So they only bring those data which we need to check for this particular vulnerability. So you can either use this Stout tool or you can simply create your bash asset script with the help of all these commands. I have created actually, but right now might not sure I can show now. Yeah, I think this is, yeah.
Got it. That's great. So, yeah, most of the things which we showed it via GUI, and I wanted it to be specifically shown via GUI is because most of the time, whenever you're executing commands, you're not understanding what exactly is happening fundamentally behind the scenes. So that is one of the reason I wanted to show it in terms of GUI, where exactly I can actually do it from the console itself. But obviously, there exists command which you can actually run and get all of this pretty easily.
Yes.
Now I have a very interesting question. So one of the participants have asked, they're not using AWS via IAM user. They provide access to users through SAML. Is there anything coming regarding SAML access reviews? So I can answer this question in two parts. So AWS provides a way to add users from a SAML federated service, which means your organization users can be onboarded to AWS in a pretty easy way, and you can that's just a SAML provider configuration, right? But whenever one of the users from your organization gets onboarded into your AWS IAM account, an account will get auto created, and 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 then there will be a little bit of different in terms of the access. There won't be any console access which will be given because now the account will be managed by your SAML provider. So there won't be any password related users which will be created. But still there are things in terms of, because IAM is not limited to users. In the initial slides, as I was saying, IAM also relates to different resources or accesses to those resources the users has, right? So you still need to give permission to those users on what are the different aspects of AWS. services or resources you want them to access. So yeah. All right. Is there any other questions? I think we have almost answered all of the questions. So yeah, so now before we end the webinar, just a brief. I just wanted to make sure that you guys understand that this is just a starting of a series of cloud security webinars which we are planning to do. So this deals with just the introduction part of it, and I'm sure that this session was pretty helpful for everyone. We will share a poll shortly. Please go ahead and vote on that poll to make sure that we understand if we need to improve somewhere or we need to work somewhere, or even to tell us that we did good. This webinar will be is already been recorded and it will be shared over the email after the webinar is done. Also, if anybody of you are interested in mobile app security, please do contact us. We are here to help you. And thank you so much. Thank you, Vaishali, so much for taking part in this webinar. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Perfect. We'll share the poll. Gaurav, can you go ahead and share the poll? Oh, I'm sorry, Hitesh. Your question was still not answered. I think we did answer.
I just saw her question. Let me. I think is your question, what does it mean to access key and what is the use of this? Hitesh, yes. Yeah, Hitesh. So basically, yeah, sorry, our bad. We just missed it. So basically, access key and secret key is the way of logging from a CLI, same as like we logging in the from GUI, like from help of username and password. So to access the cloud environment in the CLI mode, in command line mode, we use access key and secret key. Hope you get your answer.
All right.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Hitesh. Thank you, everyone, for attending the webinar. We'll be sharing across the poll. Please, over email, please do not forget to vote. It will help us to have much better content. And thank you for showing us love. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.